In a quiet corner of New York City, snowflakes drifted down like silent wishes as the city buzzed with Christmas lights and music. But inside the towering glass building of Thompson Enterprises, the night was long and cold for Sarah Miller. The soft hum of the floor polisher echoed through the empty halls as she worked tirelessly, her gloved hands cracked from the cleaning chemicals. Sarah was not just any janitor, she was a mother fighting for her little girl's tomorrow. Her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, often waited for her in a small corner near the staff locker room, coloring in an old notebook. For them, Christmas wasn't about gifts or glitter, it was about surviving one more month, paying rent, and keeping hope alive in a city that rarely looked back. That evening, Sarah's mind wandered as she scrubbed the last coffee stain from the CEO's floor. The clock neared midnight. She was exhausted, but she smiled faintly thinking of Lily sleeping soundly nearby, wrapped in her little blanket. Just then, the silence shattered. The elevator doors opened with a sharp ding, and out stepped Mr. Ethan Thompson, the powerful, sharp-eyed CEO whose presence commanded attention. He was surrounded by executives, their faces pale after what seemed like a heated argument. Ethan's coffee slipped from his hand and splattered across the pristine white floor. His fury was instant. Who did this? He snapped, his voice echoing down the corridor. Sarah froze, her heart racing. She stepped forward, her mop trembling slightly. I'm sorry, sir, it was me, she whispered, hoping to diffuse his anger before it grew. Ethan turned toward her, his jaw tight. Do you realize what this floor costs to maintain? He barked, his tone sharp and cold. The other employees backed away, afraid to meet his eyes. Sarah stood silently, biting her lip, ready for the worst. Before she could say another word, a small voice broke through the tension. Please don't fire mommy, it's Christmas soon. Every head turned. From behind a marble column stepped little Lily, holding her worn-out teddy bear, her eyes wide with fear and innocence. She walked up to her mother and hugged her leg tightly, looking up at the tall man with pleading eyes. The sight of that small child in a janitor's uniformed mother's arms struck something deep inside Ethan. For a long moment, he said nothing, the anger fading from his face like a candle losing its flame. The office went utterly silent. The sound of the wind outside was the only thing that moved through the stillness. Lily reached into her tiny pocket and pulled out a red and white candy cane, her only treat from a kind receptionist earlier that day. She held it out toward Ethan with trembling hands. You can have it, if you don't fire her, she said softly. Ethan knelt down slowly, taking the candy with care. His throat tightened as he looked at Sarah, her tired eyes, her patched uniform, and the quiet strength in her trembling smile. Without saying a word, he nodded gently. Go home, he said finally, his voice lower, softer. Sarah blinked in disbelief, tears forming in her eyes. She whispered a thank you, clutching Lily close as they left the building hand in hand, disappearing into the snowy night. But Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Back in his penthouse, he poured himself a drink and opened his laptop, the image of that child haunting his thoughts. On impulse, he searched Sarah's name in the company's records. What he found made him sit up straight. Years ago, Sarah Miller had been one of the company's brightest interns, ambitious, creative, and full of ideas. Her personnel file showed glowing recommendations, but it ended abruptly with a short note, resigned due to family emergency. Digging deeper, Ethan discovered that Sarah had left to care for her husband, a firefighter who had fallen gravely ill. She had given up her future for love, and now, years later, was cleaning floors in the same building she once dreamed of leading. Ethan stared at the screen, silent. The city lights blinked outside like distant stars. For the first time in a long while, the powerful CEO felt something stir within him, a mix of guilt, admiration, and the faint warmth of humanity that even money couldn't buy. 4 days later, the cold winds of December swept across the New Mexico desert as Ethan Thompson's car rolled down an endless stretch of empty highway. He had come for a routine charity inspection, one of those corporate obligations that usually meant signing papers and posing for photos. But this trip felt different. The vast silence of the desert, broken only by the wind's mournful whistle, seemed to cleanse his thoughts. Ever since that night with Sarah and her daughter, something had changed within him. He no longer saw people as part of a system, he saw their struggles, their hearts. The city's noise had hidden the truth, but here, under the open sky, it felt impossible to ignore. As dusk settled over the desert, Ethan slowed his car near a cluster of tall cacti swaying gently under the moonlight. That's when he saw it, a small figure lying motionless near the roadside. Panic shot through him. He stopped the car, rushed over, and found a little boy, frail and trembling, his lips cracked from the cold. The child's eyes fluttered open, whispering words Ethan couldn't understand. The boy's skin was dry, his tiny hands shaking as he clutched a piece of cloth with tribal patterns. Ethan gently lifted him and wrapped him in his coat, whispering, "You're safe now, kid. You're gonna be okay." The boy barely moved, but a faint spark of life lingered in his eyes, as if he believed him. Ethan drove as fast as he could to the nearest reservation clinic, praying the boy would hold on. The staff at the small medical center rushed him inside. Doctors said the child was Apache, and he'd been missing for days after a desert storm separated him from his family. The boy had survived on rainwater and wild cactus fruit, something few adults could have endured. Ethan sat beside him through the night, bringing food, telling soft stories even though the child couldn't understand most of his words. There was something in the boy's presence, something pure and fragile, that reminded him of Lily, of innocence unprotected. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself waiting not for a business report or a deal, but for a child's smile. The next morning, as snow drifted softly against his hotel window, Ethan sat in quiet reflection. The desert outside seemed calm now, washed clean by the night's frost. Then came a gentle knock on his door. When he opened it, 3 Apache women stood before him, wrapped in handwoven shawls. Their faces were lined with both hardship and grace. The eldest stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "You saved our brother," she said. "The spirits led you here." Ethan was taken aback. They told him how they had searched for the child for 4 days, praying under the stars for guidance. One woman reached out, placing a beaded bracelet in his hand as a gift of gratitude. "The desert listens," she said softly, "and it sent you." That moment left Ethan wordless. He realized that he hadn't come to New Mexico for charity work or reputation, it was destiny that had brought him here. That night, as he packed to return to New York, he wrote a note to himself: "Do good not because you have to, but because someone's hope depends on it." When he arrived back in the city, the first thing he did was call Sarah Miller into his office. Her hands shook as she entered, unsure of what awaited
her. To her astonishment, Ethan smiled and said, "Sarah, you don't belong on the night shift. You belong in management." He reinstated her as a project manager and told her about his plan to launch a new program, a foundation for single parents and Native children in need. That Christmas Eve, the Thompson building was brighter than ever. But this time, it wasn't for the clients or shareholders. It was for the employees, their families, and children who had no homes to return to. Sarah stood near the big tree, holding Lily in her arms, both dressed in warm coats Ethan had quietly bought for them. As the snow fell outside, Lily gazed up at Ethan and whispered, "See, Mommy? Christmas miracles are real." Ethan smiled, the bracelet still around his wrist, and realized she was right. Miracles weren't born from magic. They were born from compassion. And that night, for the first time in years, Ethan Thompson felt truly human again.